Hey everybody, Nick here, and tonight I got a review for you of this little guy. This is a Burger EXK base model, everyday carry gentleman's knife, and it's really interesting. It's made by Trevor Burger, who is a South African knife maker, and it's a multi-generational shop, Burger and Sons. But very interesting little knife here, and I want to thank my buddy Mike, who's really been stepping up to help the channel lately. Sent along a couple of loaners and some high-end stuff. So hey, Mike, thank you. Quick size comparison for you. Spyderco Delica. So you can see this is not a very large knife. Spyderco Rhodey, another smaller knife here. Spyderco Dragonfly, Chris Reeve tie lock, another gentleman's sort of folder, which is a beautiful thing. Let's see here, Ontario Rat number 1. So the blade length is pretty comparable on these two knives. And then finally, another small, subtle gentleman's folder, the Spyderco K2. So you can see here the K2 is slightly larger than the Burger. So there you go. One other thing to point out is that the status of this knife is a little bit unusual. This is what the Burgers refer to as a field-grade knife, which is someplace, I think, in the mid-tech-ish range. It's small volume production. The parts are production, but it's hand-fit and finished. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Also, you're going to note there's no disassembly video for this guy because the knife is running well, and the tools I have for the proprietary pivot don't actually work. We're going to get back there a little bit later on, but so sorry about that, but that's life. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of the Burger EXK knife here. Let's go. First off, on the good side is actually the opening mechanism is pretty interesting on this guy. This is a front flipper. I've shown off a couple of front flippers before, including the Burger EXK line, which is actually based roughly on this. It's a collaboration with Burger and Scalern, who's another designer. But anyways, the idea behind the front flipper is you've got a little bit of jimping here, and so in order to open the knife, you grab it with your thumb, you kind of grab that jimping area, and then use that to flip the knife back around. And you can do it fairly slowly in kind of a more subtle motion, or you can actually really use it like a flipper and damn it, hard to do at certain angles. There we go. You can really pop it open like that. Note that this is also a two-hand open knife, absolutely no problem. So it takes a little time to get used to each different front flipper because they all have different amounts of, sticking up out the top here. But it's a neat mechanism. I gotta say, I like a good front flipper. There's really a lot of good going on there. They refer to it as one-handed lip-assisted opening and closing. That's a little awkward, but either way, that's how this guy opens. And so, neat. Go figure, right? The blade on this guy, moving on to the good here, is absolutely delightful because it's relatively thin. All told, you're in the same thin category. You're just a little bit thicker than your Rat number 2. And I believe, yeah, it looks to be just about the same thickness as the Delica, maybe slightly more. But because it's got a nice wide blade here and a nice full flattish grind, it's not full flat, but you know what I mean, it's a full grind, it's a beautiful thing. A couple of other things to point out here. The steel is N690, which is good to go. It's kind of related to 440C or even VG10, but it's a fine steel. There's no real reason for complaint there. The other thing I love about this blade is just how clean it is. All of the surfaces are nicely sculpted. There's no crap on there. There's no thumb studs. Nothing really catches gunk or anything. The blade is just a smooth sort of slicing machine. So I like this knife a lot in that way. The blade on this guy is pretty excellent. So there you go. Next bit of beauty here is actually the weight of this knife, which is relatively little. The weight here is 2.2 ounces, which is really, really lightweight. This knife is actually lighter than your Spyderco Delica by just a little bit. It's heavier than the Dragonfly, but it's still, this is a lightweight knife. There is absolutely no complaining here about the weight. That's just nice. So Beautiful, beautiful thing. The clip on this guy is beautiful as well. It's got a little bit of a blue tinge to it, and you can see it's going to show some snail trails. This guy's been carried before. That's okay. But the clip is itself nicely done. It's good and long, and that's a beautiful thing when you've got a small knife. You want a long clip on it because that really enhances the retention. If you've got a tiny little clip on a knife, it's easy for it to fall out of the pocket relative to when you got something a bit longer than this. So that's great, and then the tension on it is really nice as well. It's a great spring clip, and I've been dealing lately with way too many crappy milled clips, so I'm loving this guy 100%. The clip here is good. The lock bar on this guy is a pleasure. That's a weird thing to get all bent out of shape on a Twitter about, but it is a beautiful thing, because there's a nice cutout here. Hopefully I can show you that lets your thumb just get in there, and the lock bar tension is basically perfect, 100%. It's a joy to open and a joy to close. There's no fight in it at all. You just put your thumb in there, and it's open. And I love, 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 love that. It's so nice. And the lockup on it is pretty solid as well. You can see there's a nice thick lock bar here. So although you're not going to be batoning with this guy anytime soon, it's still a damn nice knife. So I like that a lot. And then finally on the good, the size of this knife is damn near perfect for a gentleman's knife. It's big enough that you can get plenty done. The Dragonfly's not quite large enough to quite matter there. But it's small enough that it's legal pretty much everywhere. You got a 2.75-inch blade here, which means it's going to be legal in a lot of places. So this is just a stellar little gentleman's knife sort of affair. So that's your good. It's got an interesting front flipper mechanism. The blade on it's just delightful in a bunch of ways. It's lightweight. The clip is great. The lock bar tension and access is great. And the size is just perfect for a gentleman's knife, meaning this just is a beautiful thing in the pocket. Let's talk about the grate. The great thing about this knife is that even though this isn't a custom, it's a field grade, honestly, you could have fooled me. I thought this was a custom until I did my final research here, because the fit and finish and materials are like a custom knife, just at production prices. The carbon fiber here is really pretty excellent. Big fan of that. The fit and finish on the materials, if you look at the back of this here, see if I can zoom in. Oh, you may not be able to see it, but you can sure feel that these are completely, there's no gaps here whatsoever. Speaking of which, I love, love, love this little line of red G10 that's crossing over here. Just nice. It's a little touch, but it's a great little touch. And it's something that really sets off the knife. It just ties the room together, man, if you know what I mean. That's nice. The blue color on the titanium lock bar in here is just nice. Again, it really adds something special to this knife, and even just sitting in the pocket, it looks pretty. There's a lot of really good stuff there. The blade contours are great. The blade finish is great. And the tolerances around the blade are really excellent as well. This is a knife that I don't actually know what the mechanism is. If this is on bearings, I assume it's on some kind of bearings. Just given the joy of the mechanism, but it could even just be on washers, for all I know. But I can't tell because the tolerances between the blade and the handles are so small. And so this really feels like a custom knife. But the thing is, the price is $270 at the base price on their website. I see them a little bit more sometimes elsewhere, but the price here is just great, and it's not at all unreasonable given the quality here. You're getting something that's custom-like finished for a price that's not all that custom-like. And so that's great. Let's talk about the bad, because there's a bit of bad here. The bad side, first off, they missed the sharpening choil. You can see here that the plunge grind goes a little bit further down than the sharpening choil does, and as a result, you get something that looks a little bit like a recurve there. Not a big fan of that, and it also means that when you're sharpening this knife, it's going to be a little bit funky. It's good that they've got a sharpening choil at all, and it's going to be better than none. But that's always a little bit of a frustration when that happens. The maker's mark on this knife is a little bit big to me. And it's, I don't know, it's positioned in such a way that it makes it a little bit less gentlemanly, having the big knife sword thing on there. Just not a huge fan of the maker's mark on this guy being as big and prominent as it is. If it was tucked in the corner here, then okay. But either way, it just, I don't know. for a gentleman's folder, it's a little less than ideal. I'm not so big on the stop pin on this knife, which you can see actually protrudes out past the rest of the blade. You kind of get a little bump here for the stop pin on either side, and it's not even a symmetrical bump. I don't know what that's about, but I'm not such a big fan of it. The rest of the knife is so well finished that that just seems a little bit odd to me. Maybe it's a mechanical requirement somehow, but I don't get it. The detent on the front flipper is actually a little bit on the weaker side. Don't get me wrong. You can flip this guy reliably, but I would almost prefer a slightly stronger detent on this knife, which would make it more reliably front flip. I can get it if they're talking about wanting to do it a little bit more slowly. The detent is, well, you want a softer detent, but at least to my taste, I'd like a stronger detent. Note that everything I've talked about here so far is really kind of a nitpick. There are some things that are a little bit more meaningful. The knife is a little bit asymmetrical. If we take a look at it here, you can see that the blade itself is not centered on the knife. You have carbon fiber, liner, blade, and just the sheet of carbon fiber. I appreciate in some ways that they kept it as thin as they did. They didn't add, for instance, another layer of liner just to make it symmetrical. That would make this even chubbier. But I don't know, that's a little weird to me. It's not something I can complain about with any kind of justification, but the asymmetry is a little unusual. And then finally, on the bad side, this knife is a little bit chubbier than it feels like it should be. That said, I can't really complain too much because I can't figure out how they do it otherwise. A liner lock needs at least one liner, and unless they wanted to do a frame lock on this side, so I think it's what it has to be, but it is a little bit on the chubby side. It feels like a very thick knife for being as small as it is. So that's your bad, and honestly, that's not that bad. They missed the sharpening choil. The maker's mark is a little bit huge and kind of ruins the effect that you're going for here. I'm not so big on the stop pin sticking out here. The detent on the front flip is a little weaker than I'd like. The knife is actually asymmetrical from a vertical dimension, and it's a little bit on the chubby side. But so am I. Who am I to judge? Let's talk about the ugly, and sadly there's one ugly thing, and any of my longtime viewers already know right where I'm heading. So let's go there. Being the neck, of course, the ugly is going to be your proprietary pivot screw. And don't get me wrong, this isn't something that the Burgers created. Other South African knife makers use this exact same pivot, and it sucks just as much there, too. It's made in South Africa, apparently, so it's not unattractive. But the thing is, even if you want that aesthetic, what you can do is just fix the pivot. So use a D-shaped pivot. And then on the other side, use an actual fastener like Torx or Allen or some reasonable sort of thing. And that way you get the party on the front here and the business in the back, kind of a reverse mullet sort of pivot. But this is just completely unnecessary to use this on both sides, and it's honestly a little bit hostile. You can, of course, make your own tools for something like this, and there are plenty available out there, although not, just down the street. But also you need two of them because the pivot's free spinning and you run the risk of scratching up this very beautiful surface here. So you really do kind of want to get an official tool. Perhaps the ugliest part of this is that this knife sells for $270 normally, which is just fine. They sell a kit version of the knife that actually includes pivot tools, along with a case and some other stuff. But in order to do that, they want $320. So basically, they've caused the problem by using a bad pivot screw here. And then they're going to sell you the solution to the problem they just caused for an extra, $50. And honestly, that's kind of a different kind of ugly. I really, really don't care for that. Okay, sure, they make a little extra money on the case, but that's just, if they hadn't made it wrong in the first place, we wouldn't need the kit. And so that reeks of just money grubbing, and I really, really dislike that. It's a way to make a proprietary screw even uglier. If you're going to do it, include the tool with every single knife, or better still, just use a regular damn screw. So that's your ugly, is they're using proprietary pivot screws, and then they're charging you money to deal with their screw-up. Yeah. But okay, let's go into the conclusion, because this is actually still a really nice knife. look, this is a really excellent gentleman's folder and a really excellent EDC knife to boot. The size of it is great. It's using about as much blade as most people like me, office drone types, use on a regular basis, but not enough more to scare people. It's small enough that you can still bust this guy out in the boardroom, and no one's really going to judge you. But, you know, it's big enough to actually get things done. It feels great in the pocket because it's lightweight. The clip is spectacular. The fit and finish on it is excellent. It's a custom knife, and even though you're not paying custom prices, and honestly, even if you have to pay the extra money to buy the kit because they put the wrong damn screws on there, it's still not a bad deal whatsoever. So I am going to call this a gem, even though there's a part of me that's really not happy about them doing the pivot thing. So it's a gem, but if they were to put a real screw in here, I would be shouting about this from the freaking rooftops. This is a really nice knife with one problem that they can fix. And so I do recommend this guy as a gentleman's folder, and honestly, if the next version uses a real fastener, I am buying one of these for myself absolutely 100%. And maybe even if they do real fasteners in a custom basis, I'll talk to these guys. Burgers, if you're watching this and you can make me one with a real screw, oh man, we gotta talk. But anyways, so it's a great knife. It's a great gentleman's folder. Thanks, Mike, for sending it along. And I really, really hope that they get their screws together, because this is pretty excellent. So, there you go. Great little gentleman's folder. And, yeah. Hope you enjoyed the review and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.